Hi, welcome back. So in this video, we are going to start with functions in JavaScript and basically what they mean, why you would use them, and we would see how you can, make some functions, right? Right. So first of all, what are functions? But before we see that, one thing that you need to know is why we would use functions, right? And you'll get to know how this why is actually happening when we study what they are. But basically, the only thing behind using functions is to reuse your code, right? So now, in a really good program, you might have some functionality that you might have to implement 10 times, right? And it might be like 20 lines of code. You might be doing something complex, which requires like 20 lines of code, and hence you need to do it 10 times. So you will be using 20 into 10, which is 200 lines, right? You could do that, and that works. That is not a very big problem. But the thing about writing, I'm always saying good practice in a lot of things, and what that basically means is that your code should be clean, right? And one of the basic things of a clean code is that you do not repeat what you have already done, right? There should not be something like you have written 20 lines of code and then sometime later you're writing those exact 20 lines again because you want to implement the same functionality, right? So that is actually what functions help you with. Now we are already familiar with some inbuilt functions like console log and alert and all of them, but now we are going to actually fundamentally dive into what they are, and most importantly how you can make your own functions and use them in your code, right? Because it is not necessary that the functionality you need is implemented by an inbuilt function already. You might have to make that functionality by yourself and then make a function for that, right? So here, I'll make a new folder and name it functions, JavaScript functions, right? And inside this JavaScript functions, I'll make a new file, intro.html, and I'll make another new file which is intro.js, right? Alright, so first things first, we'll go into the HTML, we'll get our standard template, right? And I'll now indent this. Yeah, right. This is fine. Yeah, and I'll name this intro to functions. And like always, I'll give my h1 named intro to functions. Right, and now if I open this thing in my browser, I see this is what I have, right? And this is like not very a new thing for you. This is really simple. So now I'll add my script tag with source of intro.js. Right. So now I have these two files linked, and again, just to check, I'll give an alert connected. And if I refresh, I see this says connected. Right. So this works fine. And now we can start making a function. So let's say we just want to do something like let's say fruit plus banana. Then we can say car plus first of all, this needs to be in here, and hence we do not need the plus. Right. So car plus let's say jeep, right? And no plus again. This P can be capital, right? And I want to I don't know, do console.log device laptop. Alright, so now if I go here and I refresh and then I inspect, I see I have three things on my console and this is perfectly fine. This is again not something very new. So what if I wanted to do this multiple times, right? So first thing you could say is that what if I want to do this three times, let's say, right? So the first thing that you could say is that make a for loop, run it for 0 to 3 and move everything inside that. And this is a perfectly fine solution. If I refresh, I get this. So this is great. But now imagine a condition where I want something like this. Then I want one line in between saying right. Then I want this again, this thing again, these three lines. Then I want something like right, and then I want these three lines again, and then I want so I hope this is clear that first, let's say these three lines combined are one block, right? So I want this block, then I want this line, then I want this block again, then I want this line, then I want this block again, and then I want this line. So now in this case, you cannot simply use a loop. Why? Because a loop will actually print them one below the other. If I refresh, I see everything is printed one below the other, and then we get first ended, second ended, third ended. This is not what we want. We want this first ended to be after this line, second to be after this line, and third to be after this line, right? So to do something like that, the crude solution would be do this, then copy this, then do this, then paste this. And now I see I've got what I wanted, right? So this is what I wanted, right? So, but this obviously is not the clean code that I was talking about earlier. This has these three lines repeated multiple times. And like this is a really simple example to show you, but imagine like a very complex process which you are doing once, then you are doing something after that, then you are doing that process again. And that is, I'm saying 20, it could be 100 lines too, if it's like really, really complex, right? So that's definitely not good. So how do you do that? So that is simply done through a function, right? So what you can do with a function is, let's see what you can do. So you can define a function and then you give parentheses. So okay, so the basic syntax of declaring a function is that first you write function, like to declare a variable you write var, right? So to declare a function you would write function, which means that we are now starting a function. Then you would give a name to that function, right? It is quite similar to a variable. So in a variable we have var, then we have the var name here is equal to value, right? So here function, in the function do we'll have function and we'll have a function name which is, let's say, log block, right? Yeah, and one thing in JavaScript is that whenever you have two words, it's a convention to leave the first letter like this. Like you always leave the first letter small, and for every new word you would capitalize the first letter. This is known as camel case, and while not doing this will not affect your program at all, but this is just convention, right? So let's say I name my function log block, and now I'll have to give these two parentheses, right? And these are actually quite helpful in a function, and we'll see how in the next video when we study about arguments. For now, you can just leave them blank and then you make a block, right? So now this, everything you write inside these two parentheses will be inside this function, right? So let's say I put these three lines up here, right? And I delete this, right? So now first of all, let's see what's happening. We get only first ended, second ended, and third ended. We don't get any of this. So why is that? That is basically because now by writing this, you have defined your own function. Like we were using console.log, this is a function because this has parentheses and you are sending something in between. So this function was defined on the backend. So this is what they would have like in the defaults, something like this. The logic inside this would be different, which would be basically doing something like printing these out to the console. But this is how you would define a function, right? So now the function is completely defined. Now you can use it. And how do you use a function? You simply give the function name and you put a parentheses here, right? So now JavaScript knows that we are calling this. This is known as function call, right? So this is function call, and this is known as function declaration. So now first you need to declare your function, and next you make your call to the function, right? And so first let's see what's happening when I'm calling this. I see this gets printed. So this is what a simple line did. So we declared everything and we did all the logic that we wanted to be repeated inside this function, and then we called the function here, meaning we just wrote its name with a set of parentheses, and everything that was written inside this was executed. So you could imagine this to be like you have wrote this line one line and everything inside this function has been replaced here instead of this log block, right? So this is equivalent to writing these three lines here. So now how I can implement the functionality that I needed, I can write log block here too, and I can do log block here too. And now if I go back, I see I've got exactly what I wanted. I have fruit car device first ended, fruit car device second ended, fruit car device third ended. And this is what we were aiming for. But now this code is much more, it's much better because we have written just one line everywhere. And although this is not making a very big difference because again these are just three lines here, but in a very complex logic, this would actually make a lot of difference. Why? Because instead of 100 lines, writing 100 lines, let's say thrice, you'll be writing them just once inside a function, and then every time you need that functionality to be completed, you will be just writing the name of that function. This is always what happens. You could have a really complex logic in here, and still to execute that logic, you would write log block, right? Right. So this is what a function is. Yeah. So, and this is the quite basic form of function. We can do a lot of things, and we'll see functions in detail today. So I'll see you in the next video because that is it for this one. And yeah, I'll see you then. Bye.